Welcome back to Only Talk Sports, where we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ross Jaffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. I hope everybody's having a happy Easter Sunday, whether you are spending it with family and friends, going on Easter egg hunts, or if you went to church to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But also, there's some basketball action going on with the Elite Eight. However you are spending your Easter Sunday, there is so much to enjoy. But the Kansas Jayhawks just got a present on Easter Sunday because Riley Kugel, the transfer portal guard from the Florida Gators, has committed to the Kansas Jayhawks. I'm going to go over whether Riley Kugel is a good addition for Kansas and whether he can help the Jayhawks possibly have a better season next year, because of the fact that Kansas, even though they did have success this season, it was a bit of a down year for the Jayhawks, and Kansas fans are hoping Bill Self can get Kansas back to the top of the Big 12 and possibly be able to make a deep run in March Madness next season, because they did not make a deep run this year. They struggled with depth issues all season. They had some injury issues, and I believe that Bill Self knows that he needs to have a deeper team next season, because you have to have at least 7 or 8 guys that are all going to contribute at a high level. Yes, your top 2 or 3 players are your most important guys, but if one of those guys gets hurt, like Kevin McCullough this past season for the Jayhawks, that really set the Kansas Jayhawks back and prevented them from making a deep run. That's why they did not make it out of the round of 32, because they just couldn't keep up with who they were playing because of the lack of depth on their team. And I know that a lot of people are not happy about the addition of Riley Kugel to Kansas because of the fact Joe Tipton tweeted it out that Riley Kugel had committed to the Jayhawks. And then if you look at some of the comments, someone said he's mid and washed. Another person asked who he even was. Another one said, I'm sorry, but how does he expect to play for Bill Self when he had attitude issues at Florida? Now, I can't speak on whether he had any attitude issues at Florida, because I don't really follow every single player's relationship with their coach or their other teammates all around college basketball, so I don't really know that situation. But most people are just saying that Riley Kugel's not a good addition, and someone else said Kansas really is in shambles if they're taking this nobody. And what people seem to forget is that Riley Kugel used to be a former top 60 recruit. He was a 4-star guard, and when Florida got him to flip for Mississippi State after Ben Howland got fired at the Bulldogs, Florida was expecting him to be a guy that would come into the program and possibly be able to develop and improve and possibly be an all-SEC player after a year or two, but he actually ended up being really good quicker than that. As a freshman, he averaged 9.9 points per game, and he would have averaged even more than that, but Florida didn't really play him that much at the beginning of the season, and by the end of the season, when the Gators had him as a starter, he was playing very well. He shot 38% from 3, 46% from the field. He only shot 66% at the line, so yes, he has some issues shooting the ball overall, but it did not affect his three-point shooting. But then this season, he was supposed to take a step forward for Florida, and he really struggled. He could not get into any rhythm in Ty Golden's offense, and once Florida benched him, he actually started to play better, ironically, so it was the reverse role, and he only shot 31% from 3, improved a little bit at the line, around 70%, but he shot under 40% from the field, which is not good for a 6'5", 210-pound guard. And at the beginning of this past season, he was being projected as a possible late first-round pick, but that vanished instantly after his poor season. And Riley Kugel, even though he did show some flashes this past season for Florida, he definitely played better as a freshman overall. But I do believe there's still a chance for Riley Kugel to succeed, because if you look at what Kevin McCullough did in college basketball, in his first 3 seasons, he averaged 6 points per game, 10 points per game, and 10 points per game at Texas Tech, and he was always known as a better defender. Then he comes over to Kansas, and he averages 10 points per game. But then in his final season of college basketball, he averaged 18 points per game. Bill Self was able to unlock something in Kevin McCullough, something we had never seen before in him on the offensive side of the ball. He improved as a three-point shooter. He improved at the free throw line, and all around he became a better player. And obviously, Kevin McCullough was a better player when he transferred to Kansas than Riley Kugel is, but it doesn't mean he can't get better. He still has a lot of talent. Talent's not the problem. It's just him being smarter with the ball. He's got great length, so he can be a good defender for the Kansas Jayhawks. And he was a former SEC All-Freshman player 2 years ago. So I just believe the potential is still there for Riley Kugel. And another thing is for Kansas is that this is not the only addition that they're going to make. If Riley Kugel is the best player that Kansas adds this offseason, then yes, Bill Self's in a lot of trouble. That means that Kansas is not going to be good next season, but what's the harm in adding a guy that Houston, Arizona, and UConn we're all looking at. Those were the other programs that Riley Kugel had on his list. Now, you could say, well, maybe those programs didn't even want him, and that's why Kansas was able to get him, but I don't really think that's the case. I think a program like Arizona, especially with them losing Caleb Love, would have been okay with adding a guy like Riley Kugel. And yes, Kansas needs help. They're losing Kevin McCullough. Hunter Dickinson might go off to the pros. We'll have to see with him. Johnny Furphy might test the NBA draft waters, and maybe some of Kansas's bench players will transfer out. So Kansas definitely is going to have some roster holes next season. Their bench was already weak, and if Riley Kugel doesn't even end up being that good of a player, and maybe he regresses at Kansas or stays around the same, maybe he can be a sixth man off the bench. Kansas just needs to focus on bringing in talent through the portal, guys that will be able to improve their team next season. And Riley Kugel, I believe, is a good addition for the Kansas Jayhawks. He doesn't need to be the best player they bring in this offseason, but Kansas is also having some talented freshmen coming in, headlined by Flory Badunga. I talked about Flory Badunga when he committed to the Kansas Jayhawks a while back. That's a huge addition for Kansas. So the well is not dry for Bill Self. I know they didn't have as good of a season this year, and Riley Kugel is not a perfect player to fix all of the issues for Kansas, but he's not a bad addition at all for the Kansas Jayhawks. He was a solid player at Florida that kind of got worse, but he's looking for a new change of scenery. And Bill Self has been able to tap out untapped potential of a lot of basketball players in the past. And I believe Riley Kugel could be another player that will be able to improve with the Kansas Jayhawks once Bill Self gets a hold of him and tries to help improve him. But I think Kansas needs to figure out who's coming back, whether Hunter Dickinson returns, DeJuan Harris, some of these guys, they have to figure out who's returning. And then they need to work hard in the portal to get guys that are probably better than Riley Kugel for the Kansas Jayhawks to be a fantastic team once again, like they normally are in college basketball. But Riley Kugel's not a bad addition. He's not the best player in the world, but I do believe he's going to be a guy that can help Kansas next season. And it's still a solid Easter present for the Kansas Jayhawks, even though they're not playing in March Madness. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about Riley Kugel, the former Florida guard who is very flawed, committing to the Kansas Jayhawks on Easter Sunday, and whether you believe he is an Easter present for the Kansas Jayhawks, and whether you believe he can improve and help the Kansas Jayhawks next season, and what you think Bill Self needs to do in the transfer portal to help Kansas be a better team next year. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I will see you next time.